Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Places We'll Go show. Fabulous to have you with us this morning. Welcome, Jane Stiller.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Well, it is truly fabulous to have you on the show. Jane, obviously, you and I know each other pretty well, and you obviously know Richie, so this is going to be a cracker, I know for sure. Just for anybody who's not aware of Jane's background, Jane is CMO of ITV, massive job, but behind that has huge pedigree as a senior marketer of influence and impact. Jane and I share that the first incarnation of our careers was at Mars. Jane was at Mars for 7.5 years, so lots of shared interest there. Then went to Innocent, pretty cool. M&S, pretty cool as well. And ITV now for nearly 5 years, and you've expanded and elevated yourself within the organisation over time. Loads of cool things, loads of awards, launched ITV X, we'll get into all of that. But it's not calm waters in terms of your industry you're in. Choppy waters, the media industry in general, very dynamic, particularly last few years. You've had a couple of things go on back at the ranch, the Philip Schofield thing. But through it all, I think you've plotted a course for yourself to have more impact and influence, and have obviously achieved some great things. I would also say you are one of the very best public speakers I've seen, with great confidence. You've done one of the best vote of thanks I've ever seen. I've got to be careful here because Richie did a pretty cool one for Stephen Bartlett. So let's just say you're equal. There we go. I think I got through that one pretty well. But what a load of, I'm halfway through the post office drama.
Nice.
Loving that. Best deal still yet to come, I'm told. So you're involved in all sorts of amazing things. And of course, I think not uniquely, but one of two on the planet, you're a Marketing Academy scholar and a Marketing Academy fellow.
Yeah,
You've
me
done
and Ross. Yeah.
Unique, non-exec for the Great Schools Trust, loads of good things. My, in a nutshell of you, Jane, is that you're ambitious, but in the right way, fearless, but empathetic, and not somebody who loses their shit over things they don't need to lose their shit over. So there we go. That's Jane. Welcome, and great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for such a lovely intro. Very flattered.
We should just end there. Job done.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. No,
it's only going to go downhill from here.
I highly doubt it. Jane, wonderful to have you on. So I'm going to pick up on something Mark said. Choppy waters at the moment. How are you feeling? How are you doing?
I quite like choppy waters. I feel like when stuff is going smoothly, then you don't get the peak of creativity. You don't get the peak of interesting stuff. So for me, I mean, of course, it's challenging, both from a competition point of view in our industry, but also the advertising market, isn't where any of us would like it to be. But in that comes, quite a lot of excitement, quite a lot of looking at how we can do things differently, how we can change the output of our business, how we can continue to thrive and meet our viewers' needs, but do it in different and inventive ways. So from my point of view, it's tough, don't get me wrong, but it's also exciting.
Yeah, I mean, if it was easy, it would be dull, I suppose, is the sort of in a nutshell. So
exactly.
On that point about competition, if I look at ITV, Channel 4, actually any content player that's UK based, it's a big world out there, and there's the Amazons and the Netflix and the Primes and the so on. So how do you kind of just see your competitive landscape?
I think one of the bits, actually, it's funny you talked about Mars at the start. I think one of the bits I actually really learned from Mars was to run your own race as a brand, and of course look at the competitive set and understand where you sit in your customer or your consumer or your viewer's perspective, but don't spend forever trying to be them. You can only be what you are. And I think if you think about ITV, we're 70 years old next year. We are the heart of UK popular culture. We commission, broadcast amazing shows like the Post Office that you talked about that have cultural impact across the entire nation. We make people laugh, we make people cry, we provide comfort and companionship to people all over the country, and we do it, I think, in our own unique way that is really distinct and valuable in a very competitive global market. So I don't think you can get too caught up on what everyone else is doing. You need to be focused on the things that you're really strong at. And, we talked in the first question about turbulent waters. yes, but I think if you really understand what you're good at, what your strengths are, that sets you in good stead to be able to navigate some of those choppy waters. And I feel like we've got a really strong brand at ITV that enables us to do that.
Absolutely. I love the phrase, the tone of phrase you just used around being, providing companionship and comfort to the nation. I love that thought. Really warm and fuzzy inside in that sense. But one of the things I want to pick up on was you clearly have a real understanding of the heartbeat of, as you say, you're part of popular culture. And I wonder, what's your perception of popular culture today in the UK?
Oh, that's a big question. I think, to be honest, I think it depends who you are. I think we've got so many communities and cohorts of people across the UK that feel certain ways about certain things, and you see that through our content. Some stuff's quite polarizing, but then it's interesting. You have something like Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, and it really collects everyone again in a really united way, against a huge miscarriage of justice. So I think it's interesting. I think it's getting a lot more fragmented than it's ever been, and I think quite a lot of that comes down to social platforms that we talked about. You have the opportunity to find your specific people, and I think that's created cohorts of really engaged fans, really engaged kind of communities all across the UK that probably existed before, but as marketeers, I guess we didn't have as much knowledge of them because we were doing kind of qual surveys with 20 people in Birmingham, whereas now you're able to really understand the landscape of the UK and those cohorts of interesting viewers, in our case, but consumers, people, in just really different ways, I think, than we ever have been able before. So I don't think there's a one size fits all of what does popular culture mean in the UK. It is understanding all of those nuances that enable you to speak to people in a credible voice.
Yeah, completely. More tools, more complexity, more tools. But I'm going to jump out of the present and go back to the past. And, we both started at Mars: neutrality, responsibility, efficiency, freedom.
Yeah.
For anybody who's worked there, it's a bit cultish in terms of its way of thinking about things. But how did you get started? What made you think of marketing? How did you get into Mars? How did it all begin?
I was a bit of a loser at university in my last year. In fact, Richie knows me from those days, to be honest.
You are a loser, Jane. Come on.
That's very kind of you. Maybe you just didn't see that side of me. Well, in that I was just really obsessed.
I just saw you lots of bars and nightclubs. I mean,
that's true. That was my more fun side. I really wanted to just get a graduate job. I wanted to get into something where I would be trained. I think I really wanted the structure and the kind of governance, I guess, of a graduate scheme. And so when I was kind of looking around, it was the usual, all the consultancies, all the kind of consumer goods companies. And I think when I went, which not many people say, but when I went to Slough and I interviewed at Mars, I just got a really good feel about the place. And I liked the people that I met. I thought that they, even though I was, straight up uni, knew nothing, and I felt like they had a respect for me, and I had obviously a lot of respect for them. And I just felt like it was a good vibe. And like I said, I stayed there for a long time, and I loved it. I actually started in sales. So I didn't start in marketing. I started in sales working on the Asda account. So one of my claims to fame is that I visited, well, back then, every Asda in the country, which was great. And it was very good because at the time they were very into fast fashion. So it was good because it meant that I always had the latest Georgia Asda clothes because I was in the store like all the time.
Epitomizing that cool vibe again, I guess.
Well, exactly. Well, do you know what? They had really good stuff, and so I'm sure they still do. But it was great. Everyone was like, "Oh, where did you get that from?" And I'd be like, "Well, Georgia Asda.
Yeah.
Weren't expecting that, were you?" Yeah. I started in sales, but I was always very intent on moving into marketing. So I moved into kind of category management, then moved into an insights role. I worked across chocolate and food, so I was kind of quite willing to move around, do things, move location, move to different parts of the business. And then I finally kind of landed in marketing, working on Revels was my first kind of proper brand management job. And then worked for 3.5 years, I think, on Galaxy, which was at the time their biggest brand. So that kind of was my, grounding of this is how you do marketing. And it was like the best job. I just absolutely loved it. And so, so I was never set on marketing. I was just set on working for a big business, being trained. And I guess in FMCG, marketing is kind of the heart of the business, I think. And I always wanted to be close to the heart of a business.
Quick follow-up. Sorry, Richie. You said, I absolutely loved it. So this is like the advert for future talent.
Yeah.
Why? What did you love?
Oh, it's great. I mean, I think it's great because you get the P&L ownership, which I loved. So I loved the fact that you could be a commercial and creative marketeer. I love the kind of end-to-end nature of it, everything from product development to the financials, but right through to the creative, the packaging design, the kind of customer understanding. I just loved that. And also actually for me, and I talked about this a little bit with people that I mentor and stuff, for me, staying for 3 years in a job was also great. I'd moved around loads because you do a grad scheme and, at that age, you're always thinking the next thing. And actually, it was so good doing like 3 cycles of the brand, 3 yearly brand plans, understanding what had happened the year before, noticing that the changes you made had worked or not worked, and then being able to, make a strategy and a plan for what you were going to do next. So staying in role for me was a major part, I think, of why I actually loved it, because I really felt like I really understood the brand and I was learning. Every year I was learning.
Consistency, right? I mean, clearly one of the big themes that have come out, and a lot of people talk about this, particularly when it comes to branding. And of course, when it comes to your career as well, there are elements of staying where you are. But you've obviously moved around to some stellar companies, at the right moments, and of course had a good stint at the moment at ITV. So I want to maybe turn that thought on its head and question, when do you think when it's the right time to move on?
I think, well, again, you can only speak for your own experience, can't you? For me, mine has been two examples. One, when I've needed a change, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the second is an opportunity has come up that I couldn't resist, basically. So I'm needing a change. It was interesting. The only reason that I left Mars, because I loved Mars, there was, 2 reasons that I left. Main one was I just didn't want to work outside of London anymore. I was like nearly 30. I just wanted to go for a drink after work. And I'm not even a big drinker, but I just wanted that feeling of when you're young and people go out to the pub after work and you get that kind of sense of camaraderie. I just really wanted something like that, which is why I thought I can't work on the Slough trading estate anymore. I've got to move into working in London. So that was quite a big motivator for it. And actually then the other thing, I was kind of level pegging with another woman at Mars for a long time. We were kind of the two kind of ones to watch, as it were. We were very, very different. I think she's brilliant, by the way. So we were just different. I was much more probably open to risk. She was much more risk averse. I was probably much less detail orientated. She was much more detail oriented. She's a fantastic marketeer, and she got promoted ahead of me. And it was like I was going to get promoted 3 months later. But for me, I just thought, if you've chosen to promote that type of person first, even though she was brilliant, I just thought this is never going to be quite right for me. Like I know that the things that I'm really good at and my strengths are valued here, but they might be valued more somewhere else. And so again, it was just a moment in time to go. And then, like I say, the other moves that I've made have been, I've got a call and it's been too good to resist, So when I got the call from Nathan at M&S to move from Innocent to M&S, it was just a great opportunity. I really wanted to work with him. I really, I thought he was a great leader. And then again, moving from M&S to ITV, when I got the call from Rufus and, the team, and I just thought, here's a really great opportunity, great leader. I really, really value that we have a female CEO at ITV. And that was a real motivator for me. So, so there was kind of different reasons all along, but I think the main bit was a call I couldn't resist and a leader I really wanted to work for. And then on the flip side, knowing that I needed to make a change for personal, for personal reasons.
Simply for drinks in London.
Exactly, which I don't even think I ever went to be honest. Like I was, so.
It was,
but it's all worked out for the best.
Yeah, it's there's a lovely expression, the thing about an unturned downable offer is that it's unturned downable.
Yeah.
So love to come back to talk a bit about Carolyn, but I just want to talk a bit about ITV X, because I think it's what's, got a lot of acclaim and awards and so on. But, this is, people say that TV is not dead, it's just had babies, leveraging new technologies and platforms to keep growing the franchise, keep growing the brand. So tell us a little bit about the role of technology and ITV X.
It's interesting. I've never heard the TV's just had babies. That's a great phrase. I mean,
you can claim it as your
I like it.
As I do.
I like it. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because it is just a different route to market. It's the same as, if you're in retail and you've got stores and you've got online, it's a different route to market. The brand remains the same. The things that you're trying to sell predominantly remain the same. And the promise, I guess, that you have between you and your customers or your viewers should remain the same. And then I think the technology is just an enabler of that. So I think, again, we've tried to remain true in ITVX to what the brand is, but with a stretch. So, recognizing that people are watching on demand tend to skew a little bit younger, and therefore we wanted the brand to have probably a slightly fresher positioning for that different audience. But again, it's still an ITV brand. It's very rooted in what ITV is famous for. And then again, like the positioning and the proposition was driven out of the truths about ITV, and then the technology was an enabler of us being able to deliver that, like I said, through a different route to market. I think the interesting bit has been, I guess, how that technology has changed our ways of working internally. So, our ability to use first-party data, for example, which previously, it was really hard to target our campaigns with our first-party data because, we didn't have a kind of closed loop to be able to do that. So that's changed a lot for us. And similarly, I guess our focus on effectiveness, performance, how do we optimize that platform? Just the flow of information is much quicker and it's much more actionable and targetable than it ever was before. And then I think similarly, just the type of people that we're working with. I mean, this is consistent across, so many marketing teams, but, you end up having more meetings with the chief technology officer than you've ever had before. You're talking to your product teams day in, day out. So, that I think that's happened to a lot of marketers over the last 10 years, that relationship between marketing and technology is stronger than ever. And again, launching a big, product launch like ITV X, digital product, all of those bits that you would imagine needing those relationships to be strong, was part of the success of the launch, to be honest.
So Carolyn did a really good interview or fireside chat with the Marketing Society, the annual lecture last year, and she called you out, name checked you. So clearly you've worked that relationship really well, which is sort of part of, I think, your overall approach is very calm, very strategic, very sensible. As I said in the intro, you don't lose your shit. Whereas, some people, they create enormous clouds of energy and starburst and, it's very noisy, but potentially distracting. So tell us a bit about your MO as a calm, strategic CMO.
Now, I would like to think I am a calm strategic. I don't know if my team would say that. And it was funny. I think it was at MGGB when the BBC chair said he really doesn't like having people around him who flap. And I thought it was such an interesting thing because I thought that's so true. I just feel, particularly in TV businesses, but I'm sure in loads of other businesses, you are kind of slightly lurching from, front page news to front page news, some of them positive, some of them negative. And it can be incredibly distracting and you can get really caught up in the kind of hype of, be that positive or negative hype. And I do think it definitely being at ITV has taught me to play the long game and to not worry about the kind of the blips, worry about them in terms of the impact they have on the team, but actually not the impact that they have on the brand. So I think you referenced a lot of this morning, stuff that was in the press last year, and it was interesting, because we track our brand buzz, whether it's positive, negative, how people are talking about, and of course, around the time that we had really negative headlines, the brand buzz was more, the negative sentiment increased, the neutral sentiment decreased. The positive actually stayed about the same. It was mainly people who used to be neutral became a bit more negative. But, 2 weeks after it had passed, it was done. The buzz was back to exactly as it was before. The negativity had dropped off. Neutral was where it was. Positive was where it was. And, I think Mark Ritson talks quite a bit about it, doesn't it? Brands weather a storm, a lot. It takes quite a lot to totally screw up your brand. And so I take quite a lot of comfort in that. I don't think I'm going to be the person who brings ITV down, even if I was really incompetent. I don't think I'd be able to. So which does give me quite a lot of strength, but also I think then enables us to think about how do we take risks. So I think to your point around, what would my team say? I think, yes, I'm pretty calm. I think I'm quite strategic. I think the other bit that they would say is probably annoying is I've always got 10,000 ideas of why couldn't we do it like this? Why couldn't we do it like that? But if you didn't do that, or, but why are we doing that? And so I think that's the bit that they would probably say. I'm quite open to trying things. And I'm probably one of those annoying people that they think, oh God, it's an email from Jane again. And why is she asking if we can do this one tiny thing that isn't going to make a big difference? or they don't think it's going to make a big difference. But for me, I just always want to be pushing to see if there's something that we could be doing differently, which I think particularly in legacy businesses, I've worked in legacy businesses really now for nearly 10 years at M&S and ITV. And all of that is trying to break the status quo. Where I love Stuart Machen's phrase for M&S at the moment, which is, keep the magic, modernize the rest. It's like that. It's trying to keep the magic of the brand, trying to keep the magic of the organization, but push so hard on the modernization of everything else. And so I think that's where my team would probably say, yes, calm, yes, hopefully on a good day, strategic, but also quite pushy. Probably it has got connotations, that word, but pushy in terms of trying to change the way that we do things, hopefully for the better, sometimes maybe for the worse.
Try to gain compound interest through marginal gains, in that sense. And I think that's really important, particularly for large organizations, incumbent organizations, established ones. I wondered maybe if we could talk a little bit more around how you view risk. And when we think about risk in the context of ITV, how do you manage that to get sort of, the upside, minimizing downside, etc.?
It's funny, we were talking about this actually as a management board the other day, and I was thinking, I don't know if I'm naive because I don't see the risk, or I just feel so strongly that businesses have to evolve and have to change to fit their customer or their viewers' needs, that I don't see it as a risk, because I just think it's essential. So you could see the launch of ITV X as a risk. It was the biggest investment that we'd ever made. I never saw it as risky, because I just thought there's literally nothing else that you can do apart from this. It's so the right thing for our viewers. It's so the right thing for our brand. So even though I understood the implications of it in terms of the investment that we were making, how the shareholders might react to it, that I never thought it was a risk because I knew it was the right thing to do. So I think part of it might be a bit of naivety, but I genuinely feel strongly that if you've got the understanding of your customer, if you understand the market, and also critically you understand the economics of your business, you should be able to take a calculated risk, not knowing 100% whether it's going to pay off or not, because no decision can ever be 100%, so I just think you've got to take 80% confidence, however you get to that. It might be with data, it might be gut instinct, whatever, 80% confidence, and then you've got to go for it. So I think that's one bit. And then I think the second bit, like I've talked about, I think having worked, I think ITV has taught me a lot about this, just because the brand is so volatile in terms of what people say about it, how frequently it's being championed or being kind of dragged through the mud. And our shows can be really huge hits, and they can create massive kind of cultural shifts, like I talked about. So I think that just helps you weather the storm quite a bit, because you think there's a load of stuff that is just completely out of our control, and that for me makes the risk less, because it's like something terrible could happen tomorrow and the press could decide to, hound us about it, and it would be completely out of my control anyway. So it's like, well, then why would I be worried about taking a risk in terms of the marketing? Like, it's, there's no need to worry about it.
That answer for me is a perfect encapsulation of, like, you're very like balanced and level actually, and it's a great reframe. It's not a risk if you've applied good judgment and calculated risk, and so
otherwise you never do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Now, of course, we all cock up now and again. So I sometimes ask the question, what's your favorite cock up or favorite mistake, or what's your biggest mistake? But tell us about some of the things you've learned from when it wasn't all perfect.
I think the biggest thing for me that I've learned is more kind of like failures of leadership, of like stuff where I should have done something quicker and I didn't. I should have changed the way a team was working. I should have been bolder when like one of your team tells you something and you just think, I don't agree with that, but you kind of let it happen, and then 6 months later, a year later, you think, oh, I could have been in a different place here if I'd have been bolder in terms of my decision making earlier. So I think there's kind of failures of leadership and like strong decision making that I think, looking back. I mean, I've had all the usual cock ups of like, campaigns going wrong, sending stuff out with the wrong copy, all of the usuals. But like I say, I don't think they really make that much difference. Like, as I think Mark Ritson always says, no one gives a shit about your brand. No one cares. Like, no one cares. So I think all of those things we get really panicked about, but as marketeers or as, leaders, but don't think they really matter. I think that the things for me that matter are, like I said, failures of leadership where my decision-making hasn't been clear or it hasn't gone quickly enough, and that's affected people that work with me. And that those are the ones that when I think about what do I want to get better at as I become, a more tenured leader, those are the things that I reflect on to think, how do I improve that? Because there'll always be executional cock-ups. It's unavoidable. And, for me, they're not really a big deal. It's the leadership ones that, I was going to say keep me up at night, but I sleep really well. So, but they're the ones that play on my mind, I should say.
I really like the thought that, that you recognize that there's always going to be cock-ups happening in an operational sort of way. And, as you say, it's not something that bothers you. And I think that just speaks to your leadership style in itself, that it's okay to have those things. It's going to happen. Everybody's human. And reacting with that in a cool, calm, level head and dealing with it. Now, ITV, I would say, is certainly a mission-driven brand with, as we've described, having the pulse of the nation. And alongside that, of course, over the last number of years, there's been strong rhetoric around having purpose at the center of a brand. Now, I think that the conversation, certainly the tides are slightly shifting given some of the macroeconomic geopolitical dynamics that are playing out. And I just want to get your take on how you see that conversation evolving and how important do we believe purpose is going to play in the future of brand building?
Oh, good question. I mean, if I had the answer to that, I feel like I'd be a rich woman. I think it depends, obviously, on your brand. At ITV, I think it's quite interesting, actually. So we obviously do a lot of work in the mental health space. So Get Britain Talking is our big kind of mental health campaign. We've seen, enormous number of actions. So we measure the actions that are taken. So in this case, we really champion people having conversation. And so we measure how many mental health conversations have been happening across the nation as a result of the work that we're doing. And, it's like hundreds of millions. So it's, it's amazing. But the really interesting thing is actually when we look at all of the campaigns that we do, and obviously being a broadcaster, we do, probably 200 campaigns a year, because we've got so many shows to launch, and we're lucky that we've got, a lot of airtime as well. And interestingly, the ones that perform the best in terms of driving affinity for the brand, but also viewing, actually, are quite often our purpose-led campaigns. Which is quite interesting because you don't expect that. You expect them to do kind of brand affinity. You don't necessarily expect that to translate into viewing, but we do see that it does translate into viewing. which is why it's kind of such a key part of our marketing strategy, but also our business strategy. We believe that with the platform we have, it's the right thing to do, and therefore, we invest in it accordingly. So I think for our brand, it makes sense. I think then the interesting thing is how does it make sense? How do you try and manage ultimately the budget, isn't it? How much investment are you making in that versus, I don't know, ITV X brand campaigns versus program campaigns versus your, digital performance marketing strands versus, so you have to balance the investment, don't you, against all the other things that you're doing, and make sure that it stacks up. And I think that's where I think people have got a bit distracted with purpose of it, it's one lever that you've got to pull in a suite of levers that can help your brand grow and ultimately, therefore, the business succeed. And you have to work out as a marketeer and, with your senior leadership team, is that the lever that you want to pull at that time in that way? Or is there another one? And so, like I say, I think it depends on the organisation that you're in. When I look at the ITV context, it's quite a good lever for us for different things. It drives consideration of the brand. It probably doesn't drive, as much in terms of, let's say, streaming hours on ITV X. And so actually, if we've got a month where we're really, focused on streaming hours, maybe I wouldn't choose to pull the social purpose lever, but it's there, and it's there for marketers to consider. So I think it has to be thought of in the brand and the business's performance. Because ultimately, why are we here if it isn't to grow the brand, grow the business? We're not, particularly, I work for a shareholder-owned business, don't I? So, my job is to create shareholder value. That's my job. So if I can do that by using purpose, I'm going to use it. Also, it's the right, it's the right thing to do for the brand.
Very interesting, Jane, to talk about, marketing as a context, which is, it's not a thing in itself, but it's to create shareholder value. Whoever those shareholders are, whether it's listed or private equity.
Yeah.
You also, going all the way back, you started in sales. Mars marketers do own the P&L, which puts you at the more commercial end of many of the marketing world. So my ... from that is, clearly you're pretty good at marketing, but are you going to, looking ahead career-wise, are you thinking you're going to stay in marketing, or do you envisage moving more into general management? Because you from your position, you've got lots of options. So how do you think about your sort of career future?
I think for me, I definitely would like to move into general management eventually. When that is and with what type of business, I think I'm quite open to. I love my job at the moment. I love the opportunity that we have at ITV. I weirdly love our kind of crazy commercial model. We sell eyeballs. Sometimes those eyeballs are more expensive. Sometimes they're less. There's inflation. It's a really complicated market that we're in, and I quite like that. I find the content sales side of our business, so the studio, we make stuff, we distribute it, we sell it. I find that fascinating as well. So I love the business that I work in, and there's so much opportunity for not only for the business but also for me within that business. So I think from that point of view, I think I'd be really interested in how do I expand my remit to look after more than just marketing. And I think what's really great at ITV is that there is a case study of that. Rufus, who used to be the CMO, now is the managing director of all of our streaming business. So again, an example, like we talked about Carolyn before, of investing in talent and understanding that marketing is, more than the sum of its parts, and that people who are strong marketeers are often strong business leaders. So eventually, but I've got time to do that. I love my job. So yeah, I'm not looking for a change anytime soon.
Well, there you go. But look, so much potential, particularly in the organization, as you say, precedence in how marketers then can climb up and get into other sort of positions and go Rufus, right? I love your frame when you said strong marketers also make strong business leaders. I thought that was that's really something that I think we need to have a bit more confidence of as an industry as well. And we do pull a number of levers, as you described in the previous question. And I think that, really puts us in great stead to take on other roles, whether it's in or out of the industry. So we've come to the end of the segment. Well, thank you, Jane. It's just been an amazing time spent with you here this morning. I'm going to summarize some of the key themes that I've picked up from our conversation. So I hope I can do you proud. I love how you started off today when you said, I like choppy waters. That was great, right? I love when, as marketers, we often obviously are future orientated. And if we can get comfortable with ambiguity and see the potential, both, the strategic nature of it, as well as how, it just in our mindset, I think that's key to being successful in the business and our personal careers. And, I like choppy waters. There we go. Run your own race was the next element in and around a landscape that is evolving, competitor sets that clearly are new, emerging, as well as incumbent. And actually, stay focused on what you're doing. I think that was really great insight there. When you talked about the heart of the nation, what I also thought was this role of fragmentation that you spoke of, and how it might have well always been there. But us as marketers now today have the tools, the techniques, as well as the ability to actually get into far more nuanced communities and niche communities. So Britain is made up of what we would call micro communities, I guess, in many ways. But yet, I think ITV also has the ability to influence the entire nation with some of the content work and that you've been at. I was fascinated when you talked about the thought about being lost at university. Clearly, we spent some time at university together and it didn't come across. But then moving into a more structured environment and then starting in sales, all great people do, because that's where I did as well. But then, as part of that, learning some key skills, right? So the P&L ownership, getting down with the customer, and then being able to get into a marketing role where you suggested that it's really important to stay there for a period of time. So 3 years in that place and space, because actually there's some key learnings in understanding what worked well previously, and then what you could go on to do and to adapt and evolve. Your role on risk, I thought, was fascinating as well, and related to the ITV X conversation, where actually cool, calculated, strategic decisions don't come across as risk-taking. It's actually the only thing that you can do. It's the obvious answer when you have an understanding of the customer and you have an understanding of your market, and what your strategic imperative is. I loved your thought in and around leadership, and what kind of leader that you are going on to be. You mentioned your CEO talking about people that flap or don't flap, should we say, and it very much seems like you've got that sort of strategic head-on level-headedness as we've described. I think a lot around a little bit about failures as well, and thinking about risk and failures, and actually recognizing that things are out of our control, and doing so, being able to then understand that actually the decisions that we do have in our control are not as risky as we might seem, because there's a whole bigger piece out there as well. Finally, loved your answer on purpose. I think that was absolutely spot on, really. Thinking about the levers that us as marketers have to pull. And it was really refreshing to note that actually ITV has seen the benefits of taking purpose-led campaigns and putting them through. And it actually translates into greater viewerships, as well as, enhancement of the brand and business performance as well. So I thought that was just really insightful, both at a strategic level, but also just how a marketer should actually see and view those different levers. And of course, finally, a flourishing career, one that lots of dots left, but loving what you're doing. And I think ITV is far better off, for you in situ and where you are at the moment. Strong marketers make great business leaders, and I love that encapsulation. I think encapsulates you perfectly as well. So thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Wonderful conversation.
Thank you again, Jane. Thank you.